Right. There are Christians who take the idea that the flood of Genesis actually covered the entire surface of the earth, and not only covered the entire surface of the earth, but wiped out all the land animals on the face of the earth, not just the animals that were associated with human beings, and that it was responsible for virtually all the geological formations we see on the earth. And so they posit, for example, that during the 5-month period of the biblical flood, this is when all the continental drift took place, mountain ranges were formed. But when I go through the Bible, and again, don't just look at Genesis 6, 7, and 8. Read through the entire Bible. There are many passages in the Psalms, Proverbs, Job, and especially 2 Peter that address the flood of Noah. And when you look at those texts, they rule out a global flood. The Bible itself tells us that the flood was not global. On the other hand, it also declares that all human beings that were not on board the ark were wiped out, and all the soulish animals that were associated with those human beings also were wiped out. You know, a text I can take you to is 2 Peter 2:5. It says the world of ungodly people was destroyed by the flood. And so what you see here is Peter qualifying the word cosmos, that's translated world. And so he says it's the world of the ungodly, not the world of the planet, but the world of the ungodly. And in 2 Peter 3, 5, and 6, he says the world that existed at that time. So he's making a distinction there between the world of Rome, which encompassed the Roman Empire, and the world of Noah, which would have encompassed Mesopotamia, the Persian Gulf, Arabia, and Persia. And so I believe that's the world that was wiped out by the flood. And indeed, it took care of every human being except those on board the ark, and all the soulish animals, the animals that were domesticated by humans, except for those on board the ark. The strongest text you can go to is Psalm 104. Psalm 104 is the longest of the creation psalms. It actually takes you through the content of the 6 days of creation. And where it addresses creation day 3, in Psalm 104, verses 6 through 9, it talks about God transforming our planet from a water world where there's no continents, where he now forms continents, so the world gets transformed, where for the first time you got continents and oceans. That's verses 6, 7, and 8. Verse 9 is saying, with the continents in place, never again will water cover the whole face of the earth. And so Psalm 104 is stating, once continents appear, never again can water cover the whole face of the earth. And you'll see that statement repeated in 3 other creation psalms, and in Job, and in Proverbs 8. So just going through the entire Bible, you can determine that the flood of Noah was not global in extent. Nevertheless, it was extensive enough to wipe out all of human beings. And I personally believe it was a lot more than just the region of Mesopotamia. Because when I read Genesis chapter 8, it says it took 7.5 months for the waters of the flood to recede. For to take that long, the flood would have had to occur during the last ice age. Then you would have lots of melting ice to replace the water that's flowing out into the Indian Ocean. And in that case, I argue that we're looking at a flood that inundates all of the Persian Gulf, which would have been dry land before then, all of Mesopotamia, and large chunks of Arabia and Persia. And I actually have a map in my book, Navigating Genesis, showing the extent of that flood. And just to be clear, I don't believe in a local flood that wipes only part of humanity. I call it a universal flood, and it wipes out all of humanity except for those on board the ark. But yeah, there's a lot of Christians who think it only wiped out part of the human race.